Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Are we all living in a projection that's based on the give and take of information? Can there be a theory of everything? And what are the implications for paranormal experiences? Ben's tied up in the producer thing, so I'll continue. Welcome to the 932nd edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Coming to you from WOON AM and FM radio in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, on the Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live, on YouTube and via TuneIn.com. Those phantom questions have to do with our guests whom we have not been able to reach, so we will keep them in mind, but while we try and reach him, we will continue with what we always have time for, open lines. We're backed up months, if not years, in some of our correspondence here and messages and emails. So let's introduce the guest in case we do manage to contact him, and then we'll continue with open lines if we can. Thomas Campbell is a physicist, consciousness researcher, author of the My Big Toe, that's TOE for Theory of Everything. I see what he did there. An international lecturer. He describes the nature of our larger reality, provides a complete theory of consciousness, and explains our purpose and connection to that larger reality. Along the way, Campbell derives a more fundamental science that directly answers the most pressing problems and paradoxes of modern physics. In December, I attended an online lecture that Tom did for the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, a group Ben and I are involved with, and I was very impressed with his work and theories. So, should we be able to contact him? If we can't, we'll reschedule him for another day. So let's get to, in the meantime, some of our correspondence here and see what we can come up with.
Sure thing.
So, Ben, if you would take the first one from Doug in Texas.
Yes, and Doug writes to us, how does karma figure into the multiverse? I think that the abusive part about God is what drives most people away from Christianity and faith in general.
Well, interesting concepts there. I mean, karma is essentially, as I understand it, you sow what you reap. I should say you reap. That's backwards.
It is.
You reap what you sow.
It's like if Yoda was a yogi.
Exactly. Don't confuse me any further. So, in other words, if you do bad things to people, they won't necessarily get, like the universe will kind of, what you send out comes back to you. I happen to be a big believer in that. I mean, you could, it's been Christianized, it's been Judaized in many ways by various theologies so people can relate to it themselves. But I think the basic principle is there. I think there's a certain justice, I guess, if you want to call it that, in the universe. And, it kind of balances things out. Look what happened to some of the worst people in history. I mean, it was not a good outcome. Stalin, Hitler, etc. So I think that karma, if you want to call it that, or whatever term you want to use, is absolutely legitimate. As far as God being abusive, I think that's more religion's teaching that God is abusive. We've talked about this many times on this show, like, why do bad things happen? And, the goldfish dies, and you love the goldfish, and therefore you hate God because, it was unjust. I mean, for heaven's sake. There are all sorts of approaches to that are not excuses, and we've talked about that many times on the show. Now, Ben, you want to get into some of this?
It's funny. I was actually just partaking in Plato's Republic, which a lot of the main themes of it are, at least the first portion, the first dialogue in it, I believe, is
Plato's Republic is a book that was actually meant to be presented orally in ancient Greece.
Correct, which is...
in case people don't know.
Right, yes, in dialogues, as they were. One of the first portion of it is dedicated to justice and what justice is. And it's really interesting to listen to because they bring up a lot of interesting points because, we think of justice and it's kind of hard for us to kind of put a definition on it. What would you say justice is, Dad?
Balance.
Okay.
You
Then it's because they bring up a really interesting point, which is, who would you want to go hunting? The just man or the hunter, right? Who would you want to be king? Someone who's, powerful, blah, 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 or a just man, right? And they talk about, what justice is and the implications of it. It's like, a just man takes office, and he angers all of his friends because he refuses to make, special concessions to them. And that's like his whole thing. Oh, I have to end my diatribe real fast. Please take over, Father.
Okay, well, one thinks that there is a certain amount of balance. There's an old story, because Ben and I are like 8th and 10th generation New Englanders here, and my father was an old swamp Yankee. And he told me the story of how a matter of good old Yankee kind of justice, and where the term talk turkey came from. Now that's an old idea, an old saying, but talking turkey means being honest and being balanced and everything else. And the story he told me was that, there were plenty of times when the settlers and the First Nations were friendly. They would trade and everything else. They weren't always fighting. So there was a Native American and a Yankee who went, in the colonial times, who went...
Sounds like you're starting a joke.
Hunting. No, it's not. Well, it supposedly actually happened. No, there's no rabbi and priest.
A Yankee, a rabbi, a priest, and Indian walk into a bar.
Am I going to be able to tell this or what?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
So they go hunting, and they shot a turkey and they shot a crow, and the Yankee says, "Well, either you take the crow and I'll take the turkey, or I'll take the turkey and you take the crow." And the native says, "Why you no talk turkey to me?" And supposedly that actually happened, and that's where the saying came from. But the idea is, balance, fairness, justice, whatever you want to call it, and I think that's pretty much what karma is. And I think if you don't treat people justly, the universe will do it for you in many ways, and that may be function of the collective unconscious or whatever, and I think it embraces the paranormal world as well. So that's the joke, although it's a joke that's not supposed to have been a joke.
No, well, it's not really so much a joke as it is an observation. Well, the whole point of my diatribe was, I was going to go into, what we view justice as, and it seems like the new modern idea of it is karma, right? It's like a tangible thing. That's like, okay, well, this guy's doing bad stuff now, therefore I know he's going to get it, in the next life or whatever.
Well, I don't know. I'm not saying that's how it works. Do we have a caller?
We do, and it is Cousin Rick who's on the line. And Cousin Rick, hello, good to have you on.
Hello.
Take you off the bench.
Yeah, Rick, from California, who's an honored co-host of ours, as often as he can be, and Northern California show reporter. And I guess Rick is going to change the subject. Rick is going to change the subject.
And my name's Nick.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking of Nick Pope.
A man of many names.
So what do you have for us, Rick?
I could be Nick Pope. I'll take that. That's reputable. I like it.
Hey, we keep you reputable here.
Well, good morning, first of all. It's great to hear my cousin's voice. I love that on Sundays.
Oh, that's nice. Good morning.
I'm going to flip the subject completely with sightings report.
Okay.
Now,
UFO sighting.
This is going to tie into a past sighting that I actually had, and we've seen in the Bay Area. So it's a little bit involved, but I'll lay it out for you. October 30th, 2021, 8:09 p.m. Concord, California, which is in the Bay Area. Two people were sitting out in the backyard, their backyard, around a fire pit conversing. One is facing north, the other is facing south. The other is actually looking down the corridor of what is basically the takeoff area for basically all the airports for anyone who's headed north. They're going to fly this route. And typically at 8 o'clock, for some reason, there's not a lot of air traffic in those moments around 8 o'clock, as I understand it. So they're sitting there, they're conversing. The gentleman facing south sees a bright orange light in the sky. It's lower than the clouds. It's somewhere between 500 and 3,000 feet. Okay, so not incredibly high, and that's not unusual for a plane that's taking off. However, this vehicle appears to be level. So he's watching it, and the gentleman facing, who's looking at his partner, who's facing north, is kind of just watching his friend's eyes ogle. And as the object gets closer and closer, it becomes relevant that there, in fact, is no wings on the craft. And as it gets closer and starts to go overhead, it's very low now. It's probably somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 feet. As it goes over the head, there's absolutely no sound. There are 3 lights, 2 bright white lights and 1 green light, and the object appears to be just a giant cylinder or cigar. And it passes overhead with absolutely 0 sound and proceeds northward. Now, first of all, I got an incredible drawing out of this from the witness, which is always to me more important than a photograph or, well, a digital photograph or anything, because you're talking about someone's recall and memory and the attention to detail. And most of these people aren't artists, but they can convey a lot about a case through the amount of detail they put in a drawing of something they've seen. Why it struck me was a few years ago, I was coming out of my daughter's dance practice with my daughter and my son. We got in the car. We were headed up Route 880, which is that northward direction that would be on the same corridor that this vehicle was moving. So if you're in Concord, we're basically traveling north. And I see in the windshield, and then my son and daughter saw this giant cylinder going literally almost down the highway, probably 3,000 or 4,000 feet in the air, and it's not moving incredibly fast. So I start filming it, and I actually get it on film. So I get it on digital, and open a case and do the research on it. But basically, the craft that I saw back then matches this description. The difference is I saw it in brighter light. So there were no lights for me to see. There were no 2 white lights or a green light, but I could see the cylinder clearly. When I recorded it digitally, the entire time that vehicle came out as a giant orange blur. So it struck me what he reported and what he saw. And I started thinking, okay, there could be a connection here, and I'm going to fill that in a moment. The next thing is we've had reports around the Bay Area of this cylinder before. Before I saw it, after I saw it, I'm sure there's going to be more coming. The difference is this one is really clear because it passed overhead, and he could see the aluminum-like, he called it aluminum structure, which basically is gray or silver metal, and it was just a giant cigar. He got a really good close look. Now, why is this? I'm starting to lead to conclusions. What is important to know about the Bay Area? We have many, many airports here: Oakland, SFO, San Jose, but we have one called Moffett, which is NASA's research, and that's research is taking it over. Used to be a military air base. I think it still is, kind of. But the next thing that's important about that is that Lockheed is down the street. So I'm starting to realize that they're not afraid to let people see this thing because it's being seen a lot and clearly. So if this is a covert operation, that would be out in the desert, or you could just fly it straight over the ocean and, take a left and go over the ocean. No one would see it, but they're not doing that. They're flying that corridor of California somewhere north, and there's a lot of bases up north, so we could go on for hours about that. But the thing that leads me to my latest sort of inference, I guess, is that I think this is what they call as an ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, or just advanced technology vehicle that's ours, because we're seeing it, and it's not hidden, and they're not trying to hide it anymore. 8 o'clock at night, people are out, you're going to see it. 6 o'clock when I saw it about that time, bright as anything, you're going to see it. So I don't know if this is just trying to get people used to the fact that there are flying cylinders out there, but it's fascinating to me that they're not doing this at 2 and 3 a.m. only. They're doing it all times of the day now. So that's what I've come to report.
Well, thank you. It reminds me of what's happening in southern New Hampshire, in the Seacoast area, which is a tremendous hotspot. You know, the Betty and Barney Hill events in 1961 took place there. It goes farther south, Exeter, where we look forward, hopefully this year, to be doing the Exeter UFO Festival again. And people have sent us footage of just such craft floating over, I-95 and the Seacoast area, and it's really all hours of the day and night, broad daylight, some of them, and they look like these cylindrical craft that you describe, Rick. So it's not just Northern California; it seems to be a sort of a thing. Ben, comments?
Yeah, Paul. Do you think this is sort of like let's go with the idea that this is a black project, right? Do you think they're kind of easing the public into getting used to seeing these things?
Why would they?
I don't know.
I'm very cynical about disclosure, as they call it.
Yeah, no. I mean, but it's the thing about it is, if I were running a black operation, which I'd be like, hey, it's secret, but it's happening over cities and towns and main corridors of highways, and I'm missing something. Or if it is a black project, why? If it's not a black project, I get it. But then you have the other inference. The aliens don't care if we see them anymore. So there's sort of two sides to this, and I don't know which one to go on. But
there's another possibility, as we always discuss, if our multiverse ideas are true, that this is maybe a black project from some parallel reality, but not from ours. It could be a very similar parallel reality with similar laws of physics and a United States government and black projects, because these things do tend to slip in and out. That there is another theory that these are time travelers or time tourists, whatever time means. I mean, the indication is that it's all simultaneous. There really is no past or future. We just experience it that way in our limited, little squirrel minds. So, I know that there are all sorts of possibilities, but these things are being seen. Hey, Ben, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Sure. You ever deal with the IRS?
Unfortunately, yes. Who doesn't?
This is going to be good.
I think, I had the misfortune, in a support capacity to my wife, having to deal with the IRS for a very long time when my mother-in-law passed away because she didn't pay her taxes for a couple of years. And let me tell you, they are the most disorganized entity in the world. It's like it's anything bureaucratic. It ends up becoming big and bulky and confusing, and nobody knows what's going on.
No, I've known agencies that are worse than that.
That's true, but they're bulky, confusing. Either nobody cares, nobody wants to care, or it's just like, it's. I don't think. I think that if there's a vast conspiracy going on, it's just. It's hard to hide that kind of stuff unless you have, vast agencies that don't know their left from their right, or, nobody knows what's going on, and maybe there is something going on. Maybe there are black projects. Maybe it's, extraterrestrials from outer space or from other, worlds next to ours. Physical, non-physical, whatever. It's one of those things where we ask these questions and our data points are just so small, right? The facts that we do have are, okay, there was a craft seen, it was in the air, it was silent, it was seen over a highway, Lockheed and Martin was nearby, and those are all the facts we have. And that's about it. And the weird thing is, all of these things are observed. We know objectively something happened. But how the subject in it, so in this case, the person who experienced or saw it, could have perceived it completely differently than a guy in another car over. We're working at a tremendous disadvantage because we're dealing with government entities, other entities that exist, and all sorts of entities that may have nothing to do with each other whatsoever. Maybe the common ground is nothing at all. Maybe there is no common ground. So what we have is 4 things that we know, and the rest is just kind of what we can kind of piece together with what we have. It's like we're given a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and we're given like 5 pieces and told, okay, here, make a picture. And we don't really have much else to go on. But if I had to take a swing and a guess, I would say that we give a lot of people too much credit. And it's not fair to the entities that may exist out there that may not be part of the government. And I think we give the government too much credit by being honest, And it's when's the last time we trusted anything the government said, right? Which is never. So
excellent point.
Well,
right.
Rick, before you pick up your binoculars and head for the Golden Gate once again, there's a question for you from one of our other guest co-hosts, Peter Shelley in Bogota, Colombia.
Yes, and Peter writes to us. Rick, have you ever checked out the Bay Area airship makers aside from Goodyear?
There is an airship maker here. They have not really been active for a while. So they used to have airships flying daily, and you could take a tour on them. That has since closed down. It's been a number of years. I think it's been over 8 years now that they've actually not been doing flights. I might be a little off in the time setting, but yeah, there were some. But that kind of didn't make it as far as a commercial venue for people to travel on. I guess just a lot of people weren't interested. But there is a hangar. There's several hangars that they can fly out of, and I believe the ships are still there. But I don't know what their purpose is now.
Oh well, that's an important question in the context. But they probably didn't fly metal cylinders around, right?
Yeah, that's the thing about these reports. It's always the same thing. It's a very large, slow-moving metal cylinder that can accelerate. Some people say if they've watched it, they've had it accelerate. But the time I saw it, it was clearly a cylinder just chugging along.
Okay. Well,
good question.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Okay, well, everybody, stay tuned for some of our shows in the spring, Open Lines, and Rick will be co-hosting with us, and it always makes for an interesting time. Rick, love to the family, and thanks for calling in.
All right, thanks, cousin. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Yes.
Who's next there? I know we got our break coming up, but who's next there?
We have Marie from Lincoln, Rhode Island, here in our listening area. And her question is, I think your question about if reincarnation is true, why are there so many ghosts, is so obvious that I can't believe other quote-unquote experts are not saying it. Why do I get the impression that not enough intelligent people are working on paranormal questions?
Well, there are plenty of intelligent people, Marie, who are working on it. That we know some through this Consciousness and Contact Research Institute we referred to in the bio for Tom Campbell. But I'm still struck, and I don't know what Ben has to say about this, but I'm still struck by how they accept, in many cases, the old assumptions about dead people and spirits, and these are eminent physicists in some cases, and they still talk about the spirit world and this sort of thing. And not all, but some are kind of more progressive, meaning no political implications there. But I don't know if it's a lack of intelligence or a lack of vision. I think people can be intelligent but have no vision. What say you, Ben?
Well, I mean, we do have our break coming up in a second, so I don't want to give a long-winded answer before that, so we can go to a break and take it when we get back.
Let's do that. Okay, you're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON, 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful and chilly Blackstone River Valley. And we'll be right back with our impromptu open line show today, so stick with us.
The night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade, the finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
Local and live at 99.5 FM.
Okay, and welcome back to Behind the Paranormal on WON AM and FM radio. and on the TalkStream Live app, and a bunch of other stuff. TuneIn.com, you can listen live. I certainly hope you are. Go ahead, Ben, and you were going to take that answer a bit further about.
Yes. Well, I guess. We'll repeat the question, which is, why do I get the impression that not enough intelligent people are working on paranormal questions? And I think that's a discredit to a lot of people that are working in the field. Like any field, right? Any field of study, there's always going to be assumptions that people have, and unfortunately, it's we're in a field where there's not a lot of I guess there sort of is like a peer review process, but the basic scientific process it doesn't really fit into it.
The peer review depends on the peers.
Right, exactly, and for us, weirdly, we have a lot of advantages for that. We don't live in an echo chamber, which is good. In some cases, you do have a variety of different opinions on different things, both supported by different groups and different people. So you do get a wide variety of opinions, but a lot of times, I think that the reason that people land in sort of the spiritualism when you get to and is kind of based on how knowledge is disseminated and how one knows things nowadays, right? So
epistemology.
Right, yeah. So I guess really it is sort of epistemology at the end of the day, which it's based a lot on assumptions that were garnered through the Enlightenment, right? So you have strict materialists, right? Spirit's not a thing, everything's matter, whatever, we can break it down to its parts and analyze it. And then you have the swing of the pendulum in the opposite direction where it's like, well, matter doesn't matter at all. And,
See what you did there, matter doesn't matter.
Exactly. Sometimes, gotta keep up. But it's matter doesn't matter at all. It's all about spirit, and, they almost become Neoplatonists. And basically think, well, my body's just a meat machine, and it's driven by a little spirit on the inside of me that controls everything, right? And so you sort of have this dual existence that you're kind of forced to live in the modern world, which is you either swing one way or the other. And I think when you're in such a line of work, because we live in such a time now where materialism is such a thing. Pardon the pun. And it's everywhere, right? And then you have the complete opposite side of the spectrum, and there's no sort of marrying of the two like you had prior to the Enlightenment. But, our good buddy over there, René Descartes and Hegel and all those guys, coming out with all these ideas in Western Europe, and it wasn't a thing anywhere else.
18th and 19th century philosophers.
Right. And, they have their points where, I'll give them credit. They do say some good stuff. I'm not going to set up a straw man and say, oh, well, everything they said was wrong, because unfortunately, some stuff they said is pretty right, and I think René Descartes kind of sort of half hit the nail on the head. He kind of like hit it on the side and was like, well, you can't really prove a lot of things are happening, but then he came down to, I think therefore I am, and, which he thought was like sort of the common denominator for existence, which it's like, you can't really prove that you're thinking, because how do we know that we're thinking? And so, that's kind of the argument against that. Anyway, I digress. So, so we're all working with a basic sort of assumption that, okay, well, these are spirits of dead people. And that's what it's been for, like 100 years, and it's
a lot more than that.
A lot more than that. Yeah. It's dead people, and that's what we're dealing with, and that's what it is. And it's like trying to go against that's really hard. Sure, granted, you have people that are like, okay, well, we have physics now, and we have all these amazing devices that can tell us more about dead people. and it's like, well, maybe it's not dead people. But, I have to kind of take a step back from that and say, well, how do we know it's not dead people?
Well, that's true. We don't either. But some of the most, one of the things I don't like about what they're generally known as the elites today is they look down on other people. I have rubbed elbows with the salt of the earth, all the way up to some of the finest minds supposedly in academia over the course of a long life. And one of the most intelligent people I have ever spoken was a truck driver in the 1970s who read every chance he got and never been to college, wasn't the most articulate guy in the world, although he was for having the reading that he did. But, do not underestimate people. Do not look down on people intellectually, because some of the greatest wisdom I've heard from ordinary workaday people who would not be taken seriously by those who rule us, essentially. Anyway, I think that's a mistake. So I think that being said, we have to realize that all our thought patterns and our concepts are pretty much based on those who went before us, the people Ben just described. And certainly the Romans and the Greeks before, and then coming up into the modern age. And then they've even influenced the thinking of people from the Orient, too. There is some Oriental philosophy that's come in, I think, very often in the form of New Age thinking today. But we really are the inheritors of the thinkers who went before us, and we just assume that what they said was correct, even if we don't know their names, about dead people and all this sort of thing. And so the whole question that Marie asks about, the whole point she makes, why are there so many, if reincarnation is true, why are there so many ghosts? And you have to define what you mean by reincarnation and what you mean by ghosts. But I think it's a sort of a tongue-in-cheek but a very valid point.
Well, the last thing I'll say before we get to our caller, our mystery caller, is I think the way that we talk about the paranormal, we're talking about it all wrong. I think approaching it like a science is incorrect, because it doesn't function like a science. It functions like a piece of It doesn't function like you're sitting in a lab and you can repeat something and you're given all these variables and you can figure out what the variables are. It doesn't function like that. It functions more of an existential exercise. And I think
Use that word again.
Yes. Well, we're using existential in the sense that it's a part of how we live. And you can't approach it like you're in a lab trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I separate the molecules from it? Because that's just not how it functions. And how we deal with it is on an everyday basis, and it's how we live. It's not about, okay, well, how can I talk to this ghost with a box? It's, you're living your everyday life. And
maybe they do. I don't know.
Maybe you do.
Ridiculous.
But here's the thing. Even if you're talking to something through a box, you're talking with something. You're having an interaction. That's not a science. This is a communication. It's a life. It's an existence. That's what it is. It's not a science, and I don't think it should be approached as such, because if you're doing that, you're putting yourself at a tremendous disadvantage because you're limiting your scope so much.
Yeah. Well, let's get our caller in here, mystery caller.
It is.
Welcome to Beyond the Paranormal on WOON Radio.
I was joking. It's not a mystery caller. It's Donna Philly.
Oh, Donna. Okay. Well, hi, Donna. For those who don't know Donna is many things. Along with having worked with her on a case since 2005, we found out we're distant cousins. And she is from really the center of the Litchfield Triangle in Connecticut, and we use her last name, which we usually don't do because she's all over a book that was written about it.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry.
Oh no, everybody knows Donna.
Oh, okay.
Show reporter. She's been on the show many times, and we're very pleased to have.
You can find me anywhere. Trust me.
That's right, Donna. How's it going, kid?
Oh, it's going pretty good. We're hanging in there. How's it there? Going good?
Well, if you can put on your ice skates, you can get around better. But
yes, too.
So we were going to introduce you to someone. I don't want to do it on the air, but someone in your area who is. We generally have our spy network around there, and Donna is, of course, that she was the first and the original and our good friend from the beginning. And we have other reporters in the area who don't know each other. But I think it's time to start bringing people together, and you can compare notes and that sort of thing. We have never managed to have a neighborhood meeting in that.
No, we haven't, and I've been looking for venues, and I don't know how the last one worked out. I had mentioned, they I'll get back to you on Messenger about that or whatever. But yeah, I know, and they've had a few, and they were well attended, and for some reason, I don't know what it is. Maybe there's just hands of fate or something. Don't want that going on, because when I tried to get back on to get the phone number, my laptop just like crashed out on me.
Oh, weird.
And I couldn't. Yeah, and I couldn't, and I had to, restart it, and it's like, oh, Jesus. But it happens a lot.
Well, in the Pennsylvania Triangle, we have, before COVID hit, we were having neighborhood meetings every year. I mean, restaurants would welcome us, and we'd have 30, 35 people, and everybody had their Bigfoot and UFO sightings, and we'd do on-camera interviews. But in your area, it's really impossible. I even called the American Legion, and I belong to the American Legion, and I couldn't get
Yeah,
into it.
You know what it's like? It's like the best kept secret, because everybody knows and everybody talks about it amongst themselves. But when you try to get people together, I don't know if they just don't want to talk about it or they don't want the attention. I don't know what the problem is, but
well, it's not just
like I've told you before. I mean, our whole neighborhood here. You get talking with the neighbors, and it's like, oh, yeah, we had that last night. And it's just such a calm thing. It's just normal, and it's expected.
Yeah. Well, this is the area where we've talked about it on the air many times, where the military or apparent military activity was happening about 2009, 2010, and people were running into troops that told them they couldn't go to certain places and that sort of thing, and that sort of thing. So we've talked about that many times, but what does seem to be really strange is that every time we try and do something, and Donna, you've been involved in some of this when producers have shown up and this sort of thing, and that was in 2010, one of those things, and it just was something stomps on it. Something comes in from a third party comes in and stomps on it. So there's never been, at least not with us, any production that has made it past the drawing board.
It almost seems like you are like delving into things that a lot of other people don't. And there's, you know what I mean? It gets out.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe my son lives over. He's in Connecticut, but he's over by the New York border, and they have a hot tub in their backyard, and it's just completely. There's no light in the sky or anything. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and he's constantly telling me. He says these helicopters. It's almost like they have changed their pattern, and they don't go over populated areas anymore because people were starting to wonder. I mean, it was on our local, like the chat sites and everything.
Yeah,
oh my God, did you see? So they're going that way. But he said, when he sits out there, they go over a tree top, and he says they're so low, it's like you can see the rivets in the helicopters. And he said they're all unmarked, they're all black, and he said they go at a specific time over toward, the farm.
Yeah.
And he
the
said
funny
it's
farm,
just,
as we call it.
Yeah, he said it's just like clockwork, and he said they're so low that you really think they're going to like hit the house, or they're literally touching the treetops. And he sits there and he watches them, and he said it's just, you could set your watch by them, I said, did you ever get a video? We would like that,
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he sees, he sees UFOs and things, and I mean, he's a registered nurse, he's no nonsense, and he says, no, they're out there, you can see them, So it's like, well, you got to get your, everybody has technology today, and I keep telling him you got to get out there and get some videos, but he took some pictures in his yard, and he had like giant orbs and, all kind of blue orbs, and, you could see that they were in front of a tree, then they moved, and he was standing in the same spot, and so it just seems to be the whole, and he's in Litchfield County, so
yeah.
It's one of those things where, people are reporting things, but they don't go public with it. It's like, well, guess what I saw, or even the haunting, the general haunting thing. It's up and down. We had that. Oh, we couldn't sleep all night, And
yeah.
so
well,
it's one, yeah.
Well, I just ought to point out that there are things we talk about and things that are online. The whole Ashwar story that we've told many times, that was from Donna's family. And in 2010, we got that really weird infrared creature, like kind of coming down out of the tree. That was in Donna's front yard. So that's available online.
Yeah, well, it followed my grandson for quite a while.
Yeah.
And they moved, and it followed them there. And then they had just like this, my daughter tried to get rid of it. She realized, she said, no, enough, you know. And it was just a little rental house they had. And it ended up with a whole pile of like serious poltergeist activity, and then it was gone. It was
it turned out to be a parasite.
Yeah, she challenged it, and I mean, she challenged it, and she just had enough of it. And I mean, in the bathroom, the tub was parallel to the wall where the sink was, and she had a big Victorian mirror, and the thing just like flew off the wall, and it almost hit them, and you know, just all kinds of stuff was going on, and then it was just empty. That was it.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, you know, as long as you can let this go on, and you know, I'm just going to stay here and everything, and the name hasn't been mentioned in the house since anywhere, you know.
Good, yeah.
And
well,
it wasn't going to go easy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, they never do. We had weird mirror phenomena in your house. Remember that time? We got it on camera and everything else. So
we have a lot of that now. I mean, in the wintertime, the poltergeist activity. You know, like we'll be sitting in the living room and the trash thing in the kitchen just goes flying across the floor, and you know, someone goes by and just whacks a cup off the counter, and you know, the bangs, it crashes, and me with the bed hopping, you know, 3 different beds, you know, in the course of a week because I just leave them alone and get my stuff and leave.
Yeah.
But, you know, it quiets down, it picks up, and this winter's been pretty active, maybe just because we're in the house more and we notice it more because we're here.
That could be. The darn COVID thing, I mean, we need to get over more than we have been. Ben and I have slept there on one occasion. I've slept there on several occasions. And nothing has ever happened when we've been there, but that's normal.
Yeah, it comes and it goes, and you know, people will go, well, gee, nothing's going on. Well, they leave in five minutes later.
Yeah.
You know, it starts up, you know, but, you know, the activity with the physical activity, you know, we've had, well, you know what we had, and I was in I had a weird experience, you know, you're talking about, like, reincarnation and things with, you know, last caller, and we had lost our dog last April, and she was 20 years old.
Wow.
And just this past winter, I was in bed one night, and I went to roll over, and there was something on my chest. And I kind of flipped my arm over it without thinking. I was half asleep. And I had my head up high on a pillow, and I looked down, and my dog was on my chest. And she was underneath the blanket, and I couldn't feel her body, just her front paws. And her eyes were, the windows at the foot of the bed, and I saw these ears sticking up, and I'm like, what? You know how your mind takes a minute?
Yep.
And she was staring intently into my eyes with those big dark eyes. And she looked at me, and I was able to run my hand up under her ear, under her jaw, down her, you know, back to where the blanket was. And she looked at me, and then she took her face, she rubbed it like she used to all up the left side of my cheek, and down again, and she loved with force on my face, and then she drew her head back, and she looked at me, and the blanket just dropped like a magician when they put somebody under a blanket. And I got up in the morning, and I was so emotional, I was like in tears, and Bob, he's like, well, you know, but then a week later, she was on his shoulder during the night with her face against him.
Oh.
So it was like such an emotional, I mean, she was there. I mean, you know me with all my experiences. She had fur. In fact, I got up and I checked my bedclothes for, you know, dog hair and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she just dropped like a magician. Like you put somebody under a sheet and you wave a wand and boom, it just drops to the floor. So, you know, I mean, it's just very strange how things happen.
Well, the thing is, with your situation, you are such wonderful, positive, loving people. Your house is full of love. We have never had any major concerns for you,
no.
despite the paranormal circus that has surrounded you you down all your life pretty much because you grew up in that house.
Right, right.
So, and that's a perfect example of what we're always saying on the air of, you know, we call the Peter Pan theory. You know, think happy thoughts, surround yourself with love, family, positive things, and even if the stuff is going on around you, parasites are not going to attack. Because there's no food to be had, you know, essentially.
No, that's what it is, you know. I mean, everybody gets upset or mad about something.
Sure.
You watch the news and you watch the news and you're going through the roof.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, generally speaking, you know, it's a quiet household. Everybody's positive, you know. And things like that. And, you were talking about the EVPs or whatever they are. And, that's like a part-time hobby of mine now because there's so much going on in here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you another quick story. You probably got to get going, but
that's all right.
Last year I had been just messing around at night, and I don't say anything or ask questions. I just listen. And it comes through. So this guy comes on, and he says, I have no idea because there's a million. It could be anywhere from back then, now, whenever, in the future, And he comes on, and he says, a fire in the attic. So, and I don't listen to each one. I record like 10 of them, and then I go back and I review. So then, the next day he comes on, and he goes, Pamplin. And I'm like, well, what's Pamplin? I didn't know they were related or anything. So then he comes on, and he starts talking about how he didn't get out. I didn't get out. I didn't make it out. So I got curious, and I looked up Pamplin. And it was in Virginia, and there was a house fire. And there was a fire in the attic, and this guy and his twin daughter didn't get out. So I hadn't been on Facebook. I don't check people's pages, and I went on, and everybody's going, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. What a tragedy. It was a guy that grew up in the neighborhood here, his granddaughter's husband and one of the twin girls. And it was just so weird because he was telling me what had gone on, And then he came on and he gave me the name of the daughter that died. And I still didn't ask any questions because you don't know what's on there,
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me, and I've been getting this. Yeah, and I've been getting this. Had a lot of things confirmed that I wasn't even asking for, but I've been getting a lot of these scents, and it's like vanilla, and it wakes me up. It's so like somebody's waving a heavily scented vanilla candle under my nose.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of weeks ago, I woke up and there was a woman in my right ear, and she goes, "Good morning, Donna," and I'm like, "Hello," right? And then the next morning, I woke up in the same ear, and a guy said, "Are you okay?" He goes, "Are you awake?" So I sat up on one elbow, and I'm looking down the hall. There's no lights on. I get up, come down, Bob's out like a light. And so, this is just the bizarre, strange, weird, twisted, nothing matches. Everything is just random.
That's your world.
But these are, it's crazy, but.
Well, we always, there's sort of the nexus of a whole bunch of worlds. And what did...
they're just talking, or whatever.
And Lorraine Warren, of all people, came to your house years ago and called it Ghost Central.
Yeah, she did. And you know what? She was pretty dead on the money. She went from room to room, and she actually knew, where we had made a bathroom that was my aunt's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, this is different. She said, this was never a bathroom. And she went into the kitchen, and she said, well, no, this wasn't always a kitchen. And she got, confused because we had moved the rooms around.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird, And
she was pretty good that way.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
She, I wasn't really into the demonology thing, but they were nice people to us, and they came, and they were interesting. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed meeting them and everything.
Yeah, they were interesting. I'll give you that. There were many good things about them, I must say. I have a lot of happy memories. But in any case, we're thinking of instead of trying to get a place to meet physically, doing a Zoom call. We've talked about this before, and if we could kind of get on that and spread the word, it would be, way overdue.
Right.
At least it would be something, and we could make a presentation about what, other people could do the same. So let's talk about that off the air.
Okay.
Okay, great.
That sounds good to me.
Love to Bob and everybody, and keep up the great work.
I will, and let me know when you want me to, introduce me to the other person up in this area.
Oh, very good. Yeah, his name is Phil, and I think he might know about you already. I'll put you together online.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Great, Donna. Thanks for calling in. It's always good to talk to you.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, Donna.
Okay. Ben, you couldn't get a word in edgewise there.
Oh, no, it's okay. Donna, I feel bad. Donna has so much going on that it's like, just let her, she has stuff to report on, let her do it.
Oh, absolutely. She's very articulate. That was one of your two first cases.
BB's second case.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a fun time.
We have pictures of you at the age of 13 with our first video camera.
And we had no clue how to use it.
People say, "Oh, you know."
Yeah, but it
was so cute.
But if you saw the video, you wouldn't say, "Oh," you'd probably get dizzy and feel nauseous.
Well, yeah, it was kind of the Blair Witch Project, cinematography.
Yes, from a young age, I was a gifted cinematographer.
Yes, that's why you went into sound design.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, there we go. Okay. So, do we have time for maybe what's the last question?
The last question. Oh man, I don't think we can answer this in 5 minutes.
All right.
If you'd like, I can introduce it.
Well, why don't you introduce it? Maybe we'll put it on the next open line.
Yeah, we say that. Oh, well, you know what? We do say that, and we do actually get to it.
The way we're going with guests, it might be next week.
Well, hey, it's time is irrelevant. Anyway, well, kind of. Gary from Windsor, Ontario writes. What did ancient people believe about ghosts and aliens?
Oh, gosh.
He also says he loved the show, and he listened to us when we were on CBS. Probably listened to us from
Detroit, where we were across the river, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you, Gary. I think we will leave that for next time.
Yeah.
However, suffice it to say that the ancients' beliefs were really very similar to the basic beliefs that people have today, but at the same time, they were very complicated. There was a whole realm of demons, and the word demon didn't mean the same thing to them as it did to us necessarily. There were larvae, which we think of as insect babies, but they were the sort of negative spirits that people would turn into if they were mean and nasty. But they still had the idea that we have today that once you are born, you kind of remain you after death, although it was a little bit of a question about today we think you remain you forever. That's just assumed, and there's no basis for that, I don't think, particularly with the notion of non-locality in physics of consciousness and all that sort of stuff. So we can get into that later, but it was very, very complicated. So let's go to our announcements, Ben, and call it a show.
Yes. And I guess we can start off with
I have the first one.
You do?
Okay.
Go for it.
We look forward to the New England Parafest in Kittery, Maine, which runs from April 10th to 26th, 2022. We'll provide more information as these dates approach, and I must add that I got a call from the organizer of that who announced that the Dover Demon is back. Dover, Massachusetts. We're probably right at the edge of our listing area here, and we may be going out there to check that out. That's a case from the 70s. Lauren Coleman led the investigation on that, and we'll see what we can find out there.
Yes, it's like a reunion tour. Anyway, so you can visit our show website, behindtheparanormal.com, where you can find over 1,000 hours of our regular shows, including special broadcasts since 2008 from our CBS radio, Achieve Radio, and here on WOON, AM and FM, including those that have been restored in the archives at behindtheparanormal.com. And you can also hear us on many, many different podcast platforms. If you weren't able to listen to the live show, that includes Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you will find us.
And download our show app. It's pretty bare bones, but what do you want for nothing? And browse our books, along with those of our guest co-hosts at our show website, as Ben just said, behindtheparanormal.com. And you can also find out more about us, our many cases over the years, our public appearances, and how to book us. And there are over 1,000 hours of shows that are free in the archives there.
Yes, and our website also has a charity page with links to several good causes we have adopted over the years, including Hope for Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts, USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, the Sisterhood of Ground Zero, and most recently, the Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund.
So what's on the runway for next week, Ben?
Well, on February 13th, we will welcome back our good friend, UFO researcher, Dr. Irina Scott, for a look beyond what's generally known about the Pascagoula, Mississippi UFO abductions of 1973.
And there's a lot that people don't realize that was going on at the same time. Irina's really got it down. And again, we're very sorry our guest was unable to connect with us today, Thomas Campbell. We will see what happened and see if we can reschedule him.
Yes.
But in any case, we leave you today with a thought from 18th century English author Samuel Johnson. Quote, "Great deeds are not performed by strength, but by perseverance." Pretty cool. All right, I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno. And thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.